Serious, when did you realize your friend wasn't doing so well mentally? Real answer, when I saw the obituary. People don't pay very much attention to each other, even their supposed friends and loved ones. Yup, my bud from HS shared a lot of amiral type stuff about depression. He also was a real upbeat guy otherwise and had a young daughter, so I didn't think anything about it. Then I hear the news about his suicide. Crazy stuff. Now I'll send a quick message to any of my buds sharing the same type of posts and feeling down. Never know. When every weekend ended with her getting drunk and fighting with someone. She was so angry all the time but still fragile like glass. This is not a joke. When he started posting edgy Facebook memes, it was so out of character that I knew something was up. He overdosed on H the next week, survived, and I'm not sure what he's doing now. When he started telling me that Rihanna was stalking him, that was a bit of a red flag. Fast forward 3 months and he was diagnosed with schizophrenia. My buddy starting saying similar stuff these past 2 months. It's so troubling because I feel so helpless. I asked how she was doing, and she said she was fine but kept pulling out her hair a strand at a time when she spoke. It was subtle, but over the weeks, her shoulder length hair was perceptibly thinning. Her forehead started to lengthen into a growing bald patch. She suffered from trichotillomania, and eventually huge patches were gone. She no longer had eyebrows at one point. Turned out she was being sexually abused by her older brother. He had returned from wherever he was, I think college or some military thing, and I think he was a violent alcoholic. Eventually she disappeared for a while. I don't know the exact details, but I think during one of the times he raped her. She was so physically damaged, she was in the ER and then had to have surgery on her hip joints. Then she was put in a mental hospital for a while. When she returned to school the next year, she was pretty drugged up and had to wear a wig because she was always pulling out her hair. She was living with her aunt because her brother was still living at home. The parents did nothing, and as far as I know, no one was prosecuted. Rick folks, just as fricked up as country bumpkins, but with better PR. As someone who also struggles with trichotillomania, I really hope she's doing better. I know what it's like, with the hair pulling, but the rest of the story, that's hard. When he couldn't leave the house even to grocery shop or keep plans he made with friends, he recluses himself and jumps headfirst into a new hobby, spending absurd amounts of money on it. He is bipolar type 1. Recluses himself and jumps headfirst into a new hobby, spending absurd amounts of money on it. I have some thinking to do. When I learned my friend I haven't seen in some time ended up in a psych ward after a suicide attempt. We were in 7th grade and she just didn't come to school for a month. Then a teacher told us she changed schools. I wasn't mad at her or anything. We weren't exactly close back then, so I didn't really care about her. But I wondered why she did what she did. A year passes and a new group of friends gets formed, basically 2 groups of friends merged together. My group wasn't close to the changed schools girl, but the other one was. When somebody brought up the topic of the girl one day, they just said she cut off all contact with them and somebody suggested we could pay her a visit. At worst she won't talk to us. Well, we came to the house she lived in and her brother answered the door. We asked if she's home and he looked at us with surprise. She's in a psych ward. You didn't know? We had no idea and kinda freaked out. We tried to message her on Facebook but she didn't respond until about a month later. We decided to hang out together and restore the friendship. She didn't tell us what happened right away. I didn't know about it up until last year when she randomly mentioned having depression. I figured out she might talk if I asked her for details and she did. Turns out she was deep in depression and tried to kill herself. It surprised me since there seemed to be no indication of something like this, other than the psych ward thing. But at that point, I kinda forgot about it as I was sure I won't ever know why she was there, especially because my only other depressed friend at the time behaved very differently. I think I would see it in her now because I'm coming through things I had no idea about back then, but being just a kid I had no idea. She took an overdose hours after we had been hanging out together and she seemed her usual happy self. Fortunately, she was okay and is much happier now, but that really taught me you really never know what is happening behind the scenes. It's scary. My best friend from middle school through high school came to visit me when I was in college and told me that he knew that my dad had been paying me to be his friend. Geez, that's some insecurity right there. When she started to have panic attacks and breakdowns in class, I had noticed she was restricting her food, and when she started having these meltdowns I realized in what state she actually was in. I made her go to the school psychologist and she's now working on getting better and beating her anorexia, but she really isn't in a good place right now. I just hope she'll be alright this summer. IDK either of you, but thank you for being a good friend and person. She called me from the mental ward at the hospital asking me to bring her homework. She was my roommate at the time, so that tells you how observant I am. Not on you. If someone really wants to hide it, they will. Sometimes they're good at it. When he had difficulties adjusting back into society after his time in the military. I know the transition being difficult is common to many members of the military, but it was especially hard for him. He found little camaraderie back home. His dad wrote him off when he married his stepmom. His mom moved halfway around the world for God knows what. We were sitting on the porch smoking a cigarette and he just started breaking down. He kept telling me how he needed to go back to the military because nobody understood what it was like coming back to our hometown and being unwanted. It's sobering seeing one of your toughest friends break down in front of you. I just gave him a hug and let him cry. Told him I would help him however I could. So I went with him to the VA the following week so he could get therapy. He's in a better place now, but it was rough for a second there. Hardest part is that at least heavily for Marines they just don't think that therapy or help should be asked for. End up drinking and internalizing things. My friend had a panic attack in an airplane and jumped out the emergency door without using the stairs. Luckily the airplane had already landed. He even continued running in the landing zone with his broken ankle while being chased around. It's been difficult defending the guy since he appeared on the newspaper and everyone is so goddamn judgmental. He is okay now. He's taken his meds and I doubt he'll do anything similar anytime soon. When he stopped speaking to everyone, started dating someone old enough to be his father, and lost 70 pounds doing hard drugs that he thinks no one knows about. I miss him every day. I'm heartbroken. It's like we know the same person. I miss him too. When he posted a photo on his Snap story with 2 empty pill bottles captioned, "Peace out world, see you on the other side." I know this is going to sound pathetic, but I kinda keep hoping one of my friends will realize. During the day I'm kinda doing okay. I feel like I seem happy. In a weird way I just kinda hope someone will see through it and actually listen. I'm afraid because whenever I mention something that seems kinda negative, everyone just seems to get quiet, like I'm bringing the mood down. I hate being that guy, and I feel pretty embarrassed that I'm feeling this way. Even the reasons for it are embarrassing to me. He went from being really chill and relaxed all the time to sudden and constant paranoia. Everyone was out to get him all the time. Everyone was talking bad about him, ignoring him, or plotting against him. His thoughts, conversations, and interactions got dark. He became extremely attention seeking, lying just to have a story to talk about. He refused to get help, refused to admit there was a problem, used me as an emotional punching bag. So I notified his family that he needed some serious mental help. They agreed and I peaced out. He was too toxic for my own mental health, but I really hope he got help and is doing better. You just described my roommate. I really liked her at first, but now I can't wait to move out. She's so toxic. I can't deal with it anymore. I reclused and my friends just forgot about me. I spent months in bed around my house. I spent $6,000 in 4 months on a new random hobby. I have a job now, and the shifts distract me from my loneliness, I guess. Since dropping my meds, I've started to hallucinate regularly. Hasn't been like that since childhood. I wish someone would help me. I feel like a burden. Message me if you want to talk. Wish this was higher up. First time he sent a text message to my landline. Quite a few years ago, at 1:30 AM. So this computer voice starts telling me all kinds of dirty stuff. Really not the sort of thing I'd expect of him. Called his mom the next day, and I learned from her he was in a psychosis. He has had a few since then. The first really hit you in the face, but we learned to recognize the signs. Sometimes we can prevent worse. When we warn him in time, he can take action. He can adjust the medication, or he can voluntarily go into an institution. sort of relevant, but my friends made me realize I wasn't doing well when they told me I was so negative all the time and I wasn't much fun to hang put with anymore. They said it out of concern since they noticed the shift in attitude. Made me realize that my anxiety and depression were at a point where I needed professional help. It's still a struggle, but they really offered a safe space to be open about my feelings and help me be more positive. These are actually really good friends. Thank God they were concerned enough to talk to you about it. That's actually quite hard for a group of friends to do. Usually they may just discuss it behind your back and then slowly start leaving you out of things, but these are real friends. Good people. She was more withdrawn than usual. Didn't want to hang out as much or make plans with me like she usually would. At first I took it kind of personally, but then it became clear she was going through a bad depressive episode. My brother served with a girl who turned out to be actively hallucinating. No one found out until she commented on the statue in the corner of her CO's office. That corner had nothing in it, and certainly nothing that could be mistaken for an angel. Turns out she saw crap like that all the time, but just assumed it was normal and everyone did, so she never spoke up. We were both suffering mentally, but it never quite hit me how bad she was until she faked a pregnancy at 16 and then pretended to miscarry. I believed her at first. She just soaked up the attention. Once we were smoking weed in the forest with another friend. All of a sudden one friend says she has to go, so she takes off quickly without saying goodbye. She just kinda ran off all flustered. A few hours later we saw her again and she looked all sweaty and out of breath. She told us she had been running from the people following her who caught us smoking. They chased her through the woods and all over town before she was able to lose them. We wrote it off as paranoia from the weed. Turns out she was a tad bit schizophrenic. As someone who's depressed suicidal, I don't recommend coming out to your friends and family. Everyone in my life has ghosted me after I told them about my mental health. Nobody wants to be around someone who's depressed. This makes me sad. I am so lucky to have found friends that understand mental illness. There are plenty of people out there who get it and will be there for you. I try and be as open as possible about my mental illness. Probably how I found these wonderful people, but I also try and spread awareness. When he told me he wanted to kill himself, at the time I was like, yeah, me too, but we talked it out and neither of us has killed ourselves yet. This was like 4 years ago. She was always the most bright, energetic, musically inclined girl. We split paths because we ended up going to different schools. Recently I reached out to her and we decided on a time to hang out. Her once pink hair was this grayish brown. Her vibrant green eyes were grey. She was only wearing a t-shirt and sweatpants. Unusual for a self-described fashionista. But most of all, her once melodic, energized speaking voice was now dull and monotone. I'm currently trying to help her get back to her usual self, but the crap she's gone through is straight up criminal. I hope the best for her. Life can be rough sometimes. When she told me that her friend Bernard really didn't like me, though this Bernard person and I had never met before. Grades dropped first, then he went from being unhappy to calling every one of us fake after we told him he needed to change. We treated each other equally like brothers, to cutting himself, to drugs, got arrested for hitting his mother. She was a single parent BTW, started getting in fights, started posting drugs on Snapchat. Sad to see him down that road. He had such promise and all it took was him moving away to fall into a line like that. Friend of mine kept telling me how everything all makes sense now and she has figured it all out. She is female and I am male. She starts sending me full body nudes and that's when I realized something was wrong. I remember myself when I was seriously depressed. I was on the tube platform and for some reason I always liked to walk to the end to look down the tracks. However, 2 station supervisors came down from their office to me to ask if I was okay, as I was paying a lot of attention to the end of the platform. But the way they looked at me, I could tell they were genuinely concerned. He left an order of cloistered monks because he couldn't stand the silence or the celibacy. Once out in the secular world, he couldn't stand the noise or pressure of daily life and didn't want sex or to date anyone. He just retreated to his room and shut the world out. Had you left the part about the monks out, I honestly would have thought you were talking about me. Having taken the initial steps to get out of my own self-imposed exile, you should know it's possible and I hope your friend can do the same. She had a breakdown the week before her wedding, walked out of work, and thus her job, one day and spent the following 2 weeks in the hospital's behavioral health unit. She and the fiancé did a quick courthouse wedding a few weeks after and she's not working now, but is getting help and seems to be okay. We were co-workers and I always knew she was a bit high-strung type A, but I had no idea how dire things were. Pretty sure a now former friend is developing schizophrenia or something similar. He cut ties with me after I moved across the country and said that it was because I was personally responsible for Trump getting elected, and that I was toxic and damaging to be around. I voted Democrat, and he knows this. I think what brought this about was a disagreement over a political situation in our hometown before I moved. But he suffered from a serious loss in the family around this time, and ever since has been more and more paranoid and polarizing on his social media, which he blocked me from. But I still check on occasionally while logged out just to see if he's doing any better. I don't know if it's just a problem with the polarization in this country that's spilled over and consumed him, or if he really has something going on. But he wants nothing to do with me, so I wish him luck, I guess. He knows where to find me. We were friends for almost 15 years. When he started taking more and more time away from people. He's an introverted and quirky personality, so he could be weird sometimes, but I started to recognize stuff that wasn't personality anymore. His delusions started growing. Hypochondria. Problems with his parents. Finally, last year he stopped all contact with all of his friends. Quit college. I know he's alive and still living with his parents, but I don't know anything past that. We tried everything to get in touch, but his parents are uncooperative and possibly enabling. It sucks not knowing what's going on with your best friend. The sad thing is, life goes on. After a year and a half of not being able to get a him, we just kinda went on with our lives. To be continued, I guess. A bunch of people came up to me and were like, "Do you know X? Can he take care of himself?" Because we just found him walking around in the forest naked, covered with cuts, and people were reporting he was going into their tents and rearranging crap. My friend having a bipolar episode at a huge campout. My now best friend. We met online, long story. She's in Wales, I'm in America. I knew she had some mental health issues, but I didn't think it was too worrying until I saw her make a really alarming post on Tumblr, followed by her reblogging this really dark crap about suicide. Naturally I panicked, and I wrote to her frantically over the next 2 days to get a hold of her, telling her how much I love her and am happy for the fact she exists. By the end of the first day I was fearing the worst. Fortunately, after 2 days, she had posted it late at night from her perspective, and she didn't go to our usual chatting spaces on Monday because she was busy. She didn't see my messages until 2 nights later, at which point she and I had a "did we just become best friends" thing where we video chatted for the first time, which is one of my best memories. 5 years later we're still best friends, and while we both have our down moments, we'll always have each other. This is our last year in uni and we've been friends ever since high school. He was the optimistic and determined type between the two of us, also pretty smart. But a few weeks ago, it's like he had a breakdown and decided to give up on his thesis. It was very out of character, so I tried to reach out. Turns out not only was he having difficulty doing his work, he's possessive and controlling. According to our mutual friends, girlfriend is taking much of his time, and his parents were scolding him for both. It adds to the pressure. What I did was try to help him and his group mates, who also happened to be my friends, with his thesis. I had already finished defending mine at the time. He seems to be better now, but one time he told me he was still being pressured by his parents because he's probably not gonna graduate with Latin honors. I just hope his parents, and maybe girlfriend, not sure, don't know her personally, realize the possible harm they're inflicting upon him soon so it doesn't escalate even further. When she started telling horrible lies about having miscarriages and how she pulled over in hurricane traffic to sob on the side of the road, everything with her was a lie, and not even that cleverly disguised. Thankfully we're no longer friends after she dated another friend, and after they broke up she lied about him raping her for 9 months, the duration of their relationship. She was later officially diagnosed with type 1 bipolar disorder. People started to notice when I just wouldn't want to do anything at all. They started to notice when I wouldn't answer texts or phone calls at all. They noticed when I would disappear for days at a time and not communicate to anyone. I got very low at one point and thought of everything. The note, the way I'll be doing it, what time, what day. I had decided that it was time and unfortunately I didn't go through with it. I still hit that low point from time to time and think about how and what my note would say. It's a terrible feeling to be that low. I know I'm just a stranger, but I'm glad you didn't go through with it. I think that's a fortunate thing. It was a really slow burn. He was in an emotionally abusive relationship for several years. Toward the end, the last year or so, he seemed to just be tired all the time. This person, who had been full of an exhausting amount of energy, was just going between work and naps. No more gym, not much socializing, just naps. I didn't recognize it for what it was, depression, but I did think it might be a physical problem, and we talked about that. He swore everything was fine. Then they broke up. Within the span of a few days, that energetic, wild, exhausting person was back. It had been so long, I had almost forgotten about him. My first thought was, oh, there you are, and I was filled with so much joy for the friend that I had forgotten I lost. The second thought was that I massively fricked up. I didn't see the signs that were right in front of me and I didn't fight for him and his mental well-being when I should have. I failed him, and that's something I can't take back. You didn't know at the time, and you even asked him to. Not my friend but my cousin. She's on her second divorce. The first one tried to kill himself, the second one just left her a few months ago. She hit her 90-year-old grandma who had dementia. When her grandkids was kidnapped by the crappy father instead of being there for her daughter, it was about why did God do this to her, not her daughter or the grandkids but her. On a weekly basis she posts crap on Facebook about friends and company workers giving her drama. I think she just isn't getting it that the common problem is her. So I think she's not mentally well. Sounds like she might have something in common with a narcissist or two I know. The common theme being that it's all about them. When she said she would be better off joining her grandfather after he died, and when I realized that she has been lying to me for the past few years. She refuses to accept my help and she won't reach out. Friend, let's call him Jay, came back from Afghanistan and all he could talk about, literally he would steer every conversation to how the government was now experimenting with mind control techniques using quantum computing. At first we would joke about it a little, amongst ourselves and with him, about how deep into conspiracy theories he was getting. There's not enough tinfoil in the world for that guy. That was my favorite one-liner one of my friends used. But it started looking a bit more troubled than just his direction of conversation. Jay would park himself in the corner in social situations, and eventually walk dozens of miles overnight back to where he would sleep for the night. One time, at our friend's wedding, I was at the bar with him and he mentioned that he was gonna try to catch a train home and walk if they weren't running. This was around 1 AM in the middle of nowhere. No trains. Told him to hang on while I took a pee and I would drive him home. Came out from the bathroom and he was gone. Humorous side note, Jay made it halfway home that night. Told our friend a few weeks later that he ended up sleeping in the back of some Asian guy's car. The guy was apparently pretty mad when he came out to do his paper route. Anyway, it wasn't long before people in town would notice that Jay wasn't alright. Cops would ask our mutual cop friend if we knew what Jay's deal was. Old high school friends would run into him walking on the street. Could be in any town in the district. It's a shame because he was remarkably sharp, kind-hearted, mildly soft-spoken but hilarious, talented wrestler, great in school, social, pretty good with girls, understood global events, understood better than any of us why we were in Afghanistan, what the situation was like there. It was all just heartbreaking. Eventually he got help at the VA. I'm not sure what their diagnosis was, schizophrenia or something of the sort, but he's getting help and we should see him again soon. His closest friends went up to visit him and it was rough, but he was better. The scary thing is, this isn't the first military person I've heard to mention that the government is experimenting with quantum computing mind control techniques. Dan Carlin even had an episode on his Common Sense podcast several months ago and mentioned something similar. Really spooked the heck out of me. After considerable discussion, he agreed that if he spent $15,000 to free up a farm he owns, he'd eventually receive at least $170,000 in return. He literally couldn't do it and the opportunity is gone now. In high school I was told a friend of mine went to a psych ward. It really freaked me out. I went to visit her and there were so many rules in the hospital about what I was allowed to bring so she couldn't hurt herself. It turned out her antidepressants weren't working since she had gone through puberty and her doctor kind of just kept throwing more stuff at her. She had thoughts of suicide. She said not to do it, just thinking about it at all. It ended up being really good because she basically was able to take different medications and doses and have doctors monitor her reaction. She left after a week on the right medication. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.